Penalties in qualifying, Verstappen domination, and Alonso and Hamilton prove age is just a number. This is Into the Chicane, a Formula One podcast. We're your hosts. I'm Channing Apodaca.
Brandon Wood.
This is the Canadian Grand Prix race review. Pretty good race, I thought.
Oh, it was great. I loved it.
I thought it was one of the better ones of the season. I was a little bit surprised. You don't always expect that Canada's going to show up that way. I think it's like in the past, it's been pretty good, but also it's had its boring or more boring races. This one, a lot of action in the midfield, a lot of action up at the top, not including P1, but overall it was pretty good.
It's to be expected.
It was a good solid weekend. Like there was action at every single stop. Practice had some pretty good storylines. Qualies had some really great shit, and then the race proved to be exciting, dramatic. Let's get into it. FP1 we talked about. It was red flagged almost immediately after it had started because of a CCTV issue. So they extended FP2 by 30 minutes, and then there was a shit ton of rain. I think Lewis Hamilton said that it was the most rain he'd ever seen on track at one point.
Really?
Yeah, he said this is the most I've ever seen. Yet everybody was, for the most part, still running inters, and he said that he thought they needed to go to extreme wets, and I never really saw anybody do that. I don't know if teams were expecting for it to be red flagged and just canceled, so they were nulling out an extra pit stop and just telling guys to keep running on the inters or what. But it was a big puddle. The whole track was just one big fucking puddle.
Yeah, I think maybe just because of the known possibility of rain for Saturday as well, that they were just kind of running inters maybe just to get some data on the tires.
Maybe, yeah, potentially. They had lost out on an entire session, so they were probably trying to jam in as much tire data, race tracking, all that shit, pace, all that, as they could, and they did get the extra 30 minutes. FP3, I don't think had really much to write home about, right?
I think the main notable thing was that Carlos had his little off.
That's where he took the nose wing off, right? He spun, took the nose wing off.
Yeah,
that was pretty good.
That kind of set him back a little bit for qualifying.
Yeah, and he did he damage the floor? Did they have to do any major repairs on it, or was it just the nose?
I'm not sure exactly.
Okay. Either way, he ended up having a decent race. Then in qualifying, Carlos sticks his head up again and says, "Let me get some more action." He impeded Gasly. Was that Q1 or Q2?
It was Q1, I believe. Yeah.
Okay, and he gets a 5-place grid penalty from there. Oh man, and then local boy Lance Stroll hits the curb, spins out.
Oh man,
we had talked about this as one of your bold predictions that he was going to make contact and the car was going to be fine. He spins. He touched the wall. I don't know if you noticed when he spun
just
out.
Barely.
He barely grazed the wall, and for a second it looked like the nose kind of got bent out of shape. But again, the structure of the Aston Martin still holds up. I don't know what's going on with that car.
He did a full 360 and then spun sideways going down the track and then just...
Yeah, he touched the wall. He nixed the nose along the entire Aramco thing. No damage, no nothing to the car.
Yeah,
Aston Martin frame holds strong.
Yeah, that was in Q2, right?
Mm-hmm. Q2 was, except for one portion of Q3, Q2 was one of the best qualifying sessions, or had one of the best stints in a qualifying session I'd seen in a while. There was so much good shit going on because of the rain, because of the impeding. Like you had Sainz impeding Gasly. Was there one more?
Stroll impeded. Who was it? Somebody.
Yeah, he got a five-place grid penalty. Who else? There was one more. Did Yuki?
Yuki, I think.
Yuki got a grid penalty. I don't know what for. It had to have been for impeding or something. We'd have to look that up. But you have Charles Leclerc out in Q2. He doesn't get into Q3 for the second race in a row. You had Sergio Perez not making it into Q3 for the second race in a row, which, I mean, his season's basically done. I think he keeps racing like this, qualifying like this, his time at Red Bull is going to be cut short here pretty soon, or at least the question's going to come about. And then you have Alex Albon putting it P1 in Q2 with one of the best calls I've seen possibly all season, if not the last few seasons, when he chooses to go onto soft tires when they just get enough of a time window of dry racetrack with the inters drying out the track, no rain coming down. He's the first person to go onto slicks. He gets the tires hot, and then he puts in a flyer, goes P1, and by the time he's wrapping up his last lap and everybody else is going for slicks, rain starts coming down again. So it was just the perfect fucking window. I wish that they could have pulled something off like that in Q3 because it would have made things all the more exciting. Mm-hmm. What did you put right here? While Lando skates around. Oh, did Lando put on his
Lando
slicks?
went on immediately afterwards.
Yeah.
And that first warm-up lap was super tricky. Like Alex, they didn't quite show Alex's like first little warm-up lap, so we weren't able to fully tell how tough that was, but yeah. Lando was skating around immediately. I was like, oh, I don't know if this is a good idea. And then next thing we know, it's like, oh, Albon just went a second faster than everyone else.
Yeah, I remember watching his warm-up lap on those tires, and he was having to avoid certain puddles, but by the time he went onto his flying lap, those puddles had been cleared by everybody else on the inters, just tossing the water out of the way. It was brilliant. And even if he did have to, kind of hold back a little bit, he gained enough pace in the dry areas where, like you said, he was able to go a second faster. It was just fucking beautiful. I was watching with another friend of ours who I watched the replay of qualies, and he hadn't seen it, and he was losing his goddamn mind. And then you have Q3, one of the greatest moments of the season. Nico Hülkenberg puts it P2 right as a red flag is coming out for whose was that? That was Piastri put it into the wall, right?
Mm-hmm, yeah.
So Nico's on a flyer, which the Haas has proven a few times this season that over a one lap pace in qualifying, it can put up good numbers. Has zero race pace. That car has zero race pace. It's tractor when it comes to actually racing with other cars on track. But over one lap, Nico puts it P2. But it's right as the red flag is coming out for Oscar Piastri hitting the wall. And what was it, within the hour of qualifying ending that they gave him a 3-place grid penalty?
Yeah, something like that. It was because it was like immediately right after his lap finished was, he's continuing to go on the track and everything's under red flag.
Yeah.
And I guess he was getting some sort of like beeping warning in his headset that it was like, you're over speed, you need to slow down. But he was still so like keyed in from the lap and like just the adrenaline rushing from that he would just kind of blanked and didn't realize what was going on and that he had actually been like speeding over. So he didn't quite.
So he got the red flag warning during his lap.
I mean,
or was it immediately following his lap?
As soon as the red flag light came out immediately, like after he finished his lap.
After?
Well, yeah, because otherwise it wouldn't have counted.
Right.
So it was after he had finished his lap.
He got the
He's
penalty.
still continuing on down the track, but because the red flag is out, there's a speed limit warning.
Right. So it wasn't that he got the penalty during the lap.
No, and they even said it wasn't like he was going at a unsafe speed. It was just above the speed at which he's allowed to do. So that's why technically he could have gotten a 10-place grid penalty, but because he wasn't so egregious in his like speeding that they limited it to just 3.
So that's just like that's another heartbreak in Nico Hülkenberg's career because he wouldn't have held on to it more than likely. He would have lost that within the first few laps, but still for him to put in that lap that is it's a fair lap. He gets that under time within the region or within the margins of the safety car coming out. But seconds after that, he gets the penalty and they still have to, put the 3-place grid penalty on him despite the fact that lap counts. That's just, that's Nico Hülkenberg's career in a nutshell.
Yeah. I just want to touch on this before we get off of qualifying. After Charles missed out in Q2. So he after qualifying, he was very vocal about how he was upset about the call that the team made. He felt like they were way too slow to go out onto their slicks, and then by the time they decided to go back onto inters, it was like the wrong time as well. So he was very frustrated, very vocal about that. But something that should be noted that like him and Sainz were on the same exact like run plan, same exact time plan. So they pitted at the exact same time. But Sainz, amongst many of the other drivers, were able to still get their lap in at the right time before the weather really changed, and they were able to get through to Q3. So it was kind of Charles. Yeah, he was a little upset about the fact that they got caught out with not having maybe the best strategy, but
trying to place blame
a little bit. Yeah. He deserves some culpability for the poor performance. So,
I mean, it's getting hard to point anywhere else but Charles Leclerc when it comes to what's going on within that team, because his teammate is beating him on the season. He's outqualified him the last 2, if not 3 or more races. Charles Leclerc hasn't really been a threat in qualifying since Bahrain or Saudi when he took pole. Mm-hmm. He's been almost non-existent, and he's fallen off. He's taken grid penalties for, part replacements, all that shit. So he's just kind of an afterthought on this season at this point, which is funny because I don't know if you haven't noted in the notes, but the team favored him in the race over Carlos Sainz. Carlos was telling them in the latter part of the race, I have more pace, but they held them to their positions and let them finish out where they were, which they ended up finishing 4 and 5. Carlos looked better in the race to me. He said he had more pace and could have, put a little bit more pressure on Hamilton and Alonso for the podium positions, but they told them both to hold out and not race each other, which is the first time they've made that call all season. And they did it in favor of Charles, which, all right, pick your driver, that's fine, and Charles is their guy, but kind of fucked up when you think about just the logistics of how that team is being held together at the moment, standings-wise, because it's all Carlos.
Yeah, Carlos has done a great job all season, not getting too frustrated about his situation and just kind of keeping his head down and getting through it. And, I think part of the reason why they made that call not to, let them go at is because they wanted to save the tires, right? And they ended up doing a one-stop strategy in the race, and it worked out for them.
It worked out really good.
So
I wouldn't have minded if they just let them swap places. Just give Carlos just have Chuck pull to the side real quick, let Carlos go by, which, is frowned upon because that's just direct team orders without doing it strategically, pit stop wise. But Carlos was calling for it, and I think when Chuck calls for it, they give it to him. Why not let Carlos have a shot at it? It's not that crazy of a thing to go about.
Let's see, who was behind them at the time? Wasn't
At that time, it was either Albon, maybe one of the McLarens.
Pulling up results. It might have just been Perez at that point, so I don't think.
I don't remember what. Oh yeah, that's where Checo ended up. I don't remember what lap that was on, but
yeah. So I felt like they might have just, I don't know. It wasn't like they were trying to defend from behind or anything. So
yeah, they didn't really have any pressure. It was kind of just the two of them coasting along together. So whatever. They made the right call, I guess, in the end for their team strategy, but not, in my opinion, the best for at least one of their drivers.
Yeah.
Let's talk a little bit more about the race. Hamilton overtakes Alonso to take P2 into turn 1. What a fucking start from Lewis Hamilton.
Hamilton with the jump of all jumps.
Dude, it almost looked like he jumped the line early. He got off so quick. I thought he was going to take it to Max.
Yeah, I mean, he was starting from third position. He kind of had a leg up on Alonso, just having the better racing line. But just his reaction time was so good that he had it already made by the time they got to the corner.
It seemed like he went from the early gears right into the high gears where he needed to be. Like everybody else, even Max looked like off the line he gets a good jump or a decent jump, him and Max and Alonso, and then kind of slowed down, whereas Lewis just like straight shot. Like his shifting was just so on point that it was everywhere he needed to be. He just missed out on making that pass on Max by a split second going into the turn. I want to talk too about, so if Lewis has a good hold on P2 for the majority of the race. Alonso, I forget which lap he passes him on. Beautiful move by Alonso. He took his time, rode behind Lewis, stretched things out. He eventually makes the pass on Lewis. It was nice. It was in the DRS zone. But Lewis stuck in his slipstream so well. If you watch that highlight, I was rewatching it last night, and I was like, Jesus Christ, Lewis really is the fucking GOAT. He might still, we've talked about this, about who's the best driver, who's the second best driver in the world. Lewis in a better car this year might still just be the best. It's that attitude of not letting go of a position. Like Alonso gets behind or gets around him in the DRS zone. Lewis stays in his slipstream, no joke, by about a foot or two. Just sticks right behind Alonso's car. He knows he's probably going to lose the position, but he gets himself right in that slipstream, and he stayed with him while Alonso had DRS on him, continuing to pass him, and he stayed within tenths of a second of Alonso. And it's just that fight to stay right there. And, knowing the spatial awareness of how close you can get to the car when that car is getting around you, where to find your car in the slipstream. He didn't get back into the position, but the fight that he put up, I just thought was brilliant. It was one of my favorite highlights of the race.
Yeah. And, and doing all that in a, objectively a slower car. Right?
Yeah.
Like Hamilton got repassed by Alonso lap 23.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And then he kept it within that up until like the last 9 laps to go.
Yeah.
He was within 4 seconds gap, and then just started like creeping back up. That last 9 laps, he was in like a second and a half behind.
Yeah, he was right up there, and Alonso was asking his pit wall about because he was doing the lifting off the throttle, trying to save the tires and store up energy, and he was asking him, when he can give that up, and it wasn't until Hamilton was right there within that window of passing him that they told him to change his strategy and go harder on his pace. Which had they not done that exact strategy, Lewis might have passed him. If they had just mucked up anything with their fuel saving, with their energy storage, and the degradation on their tires, Lewis might have gotten around him.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, let's talk about this real quick, though. One of your predictions almost came true.
Almost.
Our boy, George Russell. It's almost funnier that it happened the way it did. Go ahead, take it away.
So it was lap 12. George Russell gets a little too aggressive on that curb of one of the wall of champions. Unfortunately, he's not a champion, so he didn't get taken completely out. But
why is that wall called that? What is that?
I think there's just a lot of champions have gone into that wall.
Oh, really?
Yeah. But anyways, Russell's back rear right tire hits the wall. I'm surprised he didn't have more damage than what he did. It looked like it was pretty bad. I guess it was just the wall, kind of like pieces of the wall kind of flew off.
But also, the rim of his tire was pretty jacked up. I'm surprised that the chassis or the drivetrain didn't bend on his rear axle.
I would have thought maybe suspension or something like that.
And the fact that he got it back to the pit basically on 3 wheels, that was pretty impressive.
Yeah.
And then the team got him back on track.
I was so confused. Like, what is going on? Did he even hit the barrier at all?
They were able to get that car back out there pretty quick, and he was able to almost finish the race. But let's just talk about how goddamn funny it was that going into this race, George is talking about how dangerous certain drivers are for making contact, and he can't even keep himself out of the wall.
He didn't even need anybody else to help.
He needed nobody around him to cause a fucking accident. Just funny. I don't know. Max hit a bird, lap 12. Didn't seem to impede him at all.
No. Did you see?
He laughed about it.
Did you see the photo?
No. Okay. I heard that there was a photo floating around.
Yeah. So they found that in his brake duct after the race.
That is unbelievable. Is that a crow?
Just some small. I don't think it was a crow. It seems too small, but yeah. So this happened lap 12. So
that thing is maimed.
So he went 58 laps with a bird in his brake duct.
That's crazy. How does that not completely ruin his brake duct when you get a tearaway in there and it'll completely ruin your race?
Yeah, it must have just been like.
It had to have just been in the perfect place.
Yeah, but
wow, bird strike Yeah, he mentioned it, and then I think he kind of laughed it off. I think I hit a bird.
Yeah.
And then, 58 laps. Wow.
So speaking of 58 laps, our boy, Alex Albon.
Unreal.
Pits under the safety car at lap 12 that was caused by George Russell. Goes on to the hards, makes him last the entire race, manages to fend off a train of cars, all much faster than he, and holds it on to get P7. Massive points for Williams.
I think there was a 7-car train behind him, at least at one point.
At one point, yeah, I'm sure.
Man, he was driving like a motherfucking maniac. And Alex isn't really known for his defensive driving. Something about that Williams, though, it makes it so hard to pass because he was slowing him down, and then once he would hit the straights, take off because it has so much straight line speed.
Yep.
But in the corners, everybody was getting right on his ass, but he would just be gone. And then, making his tires last. He didn't make too many great defensive moves. He just kept everybody along the outside. Mm-hmm. But that in itself is a great defensive move. You know what I mean? The wherewithal to keep the distance and manage your pace and all that.
Yeah, driver of the day.
Driver of the day. I voted for him.
Yeah, I mean,
we don't normally get to vote because voting usually closes about 2 hours before we're even awake. But
yeah, I mean the good call in qualifying, Q2 got him up into a good starting position, and then just running those hard tires the way he did, making him last, it just deserves every bit of that finish.
Beautiful drive of his life, or at least of the year. I was watching Alex defending like that, and because of the way that Checo's been driving, even though he does pass Alex, by one place, he finishes P6 to Alex's P7. I was like, man, how much longer is Red Bull going to let Alex sit at Williams before they get him back in the program? Because he's no longer under contract with them, right?
No, I don't think so.
Or, not really how much longer, but would that even be a viable option for them? I don't know if they'll go back to that.
Yeah, I don't know about that. I think Red Bull, any future drivers, they're going to want to bring on someone that's a little fresher, someone out of,
Yeah, you have to be looking at Alex, though, and being like, did we make the right call here? Yeah. They did.
Yeah, I mean, Alex is a great driver, but is he the right driver for a team like Red Bull?
No.
I don't know. I don't think so.
I'm not saying that this is what I think. I'm saying that, like, the way that I think Red Bull thinks, because they make such hasty moves.
They're like,
they'll literally,
a little bit,
they brought Daniel Ricciardo back, and obviously not in an actual racing role, but
the
way that they move people around, you have to think that they're looking at Alex and at least raising an eyebrow and looking at the situation that Checo's in, because they make moves at the drop of a hat.
This is third Q3 in a row that Perez didn't make.
Definitely 2. I don't know if it's 3 in a row. It could be.
And then I saw a interesting stat that, because there's been a lot of comparisons between Perez and Bottas.
Mm-hmm.
Bottas, during his time at Mercedes, had 100% Q3 percentage.
Oh, wow.
So people are like, oh, well,
who's the better wingman?
Yeah.
That's man. When you bring in qualies, that's a different story. I think there's 2 different ways to look at it. Bottas moved out of the way a lot more for Lewis. You can't deny what Checo's done for Max in actual on-track defense, though. You know what I mean?
Sure.
Checo's done more damage to the rest of the pack than I think Bottas did in helping Lewis get ahead, if that makes sense. You know what I'm saying? Like, Checo's affected the other 18 drivers more than I think Bottas affected Lewis. But there's also an extra 2 years there.
Yeah.
With Bottas and Lewis. So I don't know. They're not really comparable drivers. And it's trending even more so because I think Bottas had more of a shot all his years at Mercedes than Checo's going to get at a world championship with Red Bull, because it's dwindling down here.
That's true.
We thought going into this season at the beginning that this might be Checo's shot, and it's completely out the window now.
Yeah. Speaking of Bottas, we saw Stroll sneak past him.
Nope.
At the line.
Literally at the line.
Literally at the line to take P9.
A swapping of places from a few years ago. I don't know if you remember Bottas overtaking Stroll back when Stroll was at Williams. I think it was his first podium. Do you remember that? Baku,
vaguely,
2017?
Yeah.
Bottas just got by him, and it would have been Stroll's first and probably only P2 at the time, but it was for his first podium on the line. Same thing. It was reminiscent of this, but a switching of the roles.
So with that being said, how do you feel about Stroll's performance this weekend?
Horrendous. Outside of that one move, he passed him to get one extra point, right? The difference between P10 and P9 is 1 point.
So, yeah.
Overall, aside from that one move, all he really did was keep his car out of the wall one time.
Yeah.
And then he gained 3 places. Not a good showing for Lance, especially at your home race. But comparatively to his teammate, just a terrible showing.
I'm kind of getting the feeling that this is what we're just going to have to expect from Lance for the rest of the season, where it'll be 1 or 2 little mistakes earlier on in the weekend, either in practice or qualifying or early in the race that sets him back. And then he has to fight and charge back to kind of retake those places he lost. And then in the end, not really getting much out of all of that effort, right?
That's like the story for a second seat driver, though. Every driver in the second seat who's not number 1 on their team is always having a bad start to the weekend and then having to make up places. And then it gives all the fans hope and gives themselves hope that, there's something there. But I don't know. I expected more out of Lance in the last few races, and I really thought he was going to have a better showing here, but he doesn't make it into Q2 and then barely ekes out an extra point. And you know what? He actually finished P10 on the line. If it wasn't for Lando Norris's penalty, which we'll talk about here in a minute, if it wasn't for that, then he's got 1 point. And if he makes that, he gets 1 point P10 by a millimeter on the line.
Yeah. I mean, when he's in those situations, he's doing what he needs to be doing, but I think it's just too little, too late.
He's doing just enough to keep himself in the conversation, but if he continues to be out of the points, which barely ekes it in, and doesn't make it into Q3, Lawrence Stroll is going to have to look at this and be like, how long are we gonna put off the conversation?
Yeah.
Some reporter out there needs to go, when do you guys start having the conversation about whether or not you want to take this team seriously and put a competitive driver in that number 2 seat? Somebody's got to ask that fucking question with Lawrence Stroll on the mic. Because who is it? Mike Crack?
Yeah, he's not going to answer
He's not going to answer that.
No, that's a Lawrence question for sure. Papa Lawrence.
Yeah. They're going to dodge that situation as long as they can. And anybody looking at the Aston Martin team, that's the number 1 question on their plate right now.
Yeah, it's tough because they've already pretty much lost out on second in the Constructors' Championship.
For now
they have.
They're within the window and there's plenty of time left, but if it stays like this, George Russell's going to continue to finish higher than him as long as he keeps it out of the
George
wall.
is not going to DNF every weekend.
Right.
So, at some point they're going to have a rude awakening.
Yeah, 1 point per race or less is not going to do it. And this is they got a 1-dog fight going on right now, and it's not sustainable. So you guys need to start looking at yourselves in the mirror and asking yourselves when you're going to want to send that bowl cut back home.
Yeah. How did you feel about Lando's 5-second penalty?
I thought it was horrible. It feels to me like the FIA is targeting Lando a little bit.
Why?
Because that's such a harsh penalty. That's something that every driver does. So he got an unsportsmanlike conduct, which you don't really hear in Formula One, for basically like impeding the entire pack. So under safety car, he goes extra slow to allow for more pit stop time for him and his teammate. That's something that every driver has done. He said it in his post-race interview. He was like, I don't understand why I'm getting this. if I'm getting a penalty for this, then I should get a penalty every single week, and so should every other driver. It's not uncommonplace for guys to create extra space for themselves and their teammate.
Yeah, there was a clip I saw. I think it was either Jeddah. I think it was Jeddah 2021. Bottas did this.
Yeah.
And Max was complaining about it on the radio, and I don't think he got a penalty then.
Yeah, and I mean, Lando's gotten penalties a couple times this season. Some of them legitimate, maybe some of them less, but this looks to me like I'm not going to say that they're going after him, but it kind of looks that way. I don't know why the FIA would particularly go after Lando, but this comes out of nowhere, and then to call it unsportsmanlike conduct as opposed to just a safety car infringement or something, there's an actual rule name that this should fall under, but to call it unsportsmanlike conduct, name one sportsman on the grid.
Technically, they're all sportsmen,
but who's conduct?
I think it's because this particular thing falls under an international sporting code, which is like that's why they had to use that terminology. It's like the certain part of the rules that it falls under, which is why they use that. But
I guess, but if you're going to use that, then why not penalize Fernando Alonso for what he did in the pit lane when he basically attempted.
He didn't impede anybody though.
He didn't, but he attempted to take a dive. Is that not unsportsmanlike conduct in any other sport?
He didn't take a dive. He exaggerated.
He tried to sell a penalty. That in every other sport is unsportsmanlike conduct.
But he didn't impede anybody's race in doing so, though.
No, I guess that would be the fine line.
I mean, that is the line. That's literally what the problem is.
It seems to me a little harsh. I didn't like it. What did you think about it?
Yeah, it does seem it's like Yuki last week. It's like it seems super harsh, but at the same time, I understand why they got the penalty. It just doesn't seem like it completely meets the
maybe this year the FIA is kind of just making examples out of people because the inconsistency. Maybe they're introducing a way of refereeing and handing out penalties and instituting the rule book in ways that we haven't seen. So maybe that's why we feel like this is out of the blue and they've been all over the place. But yeah, I didn't like it overall. But while we're on the subject, what did you think of Fernando Alonso's attempt at getting a penalty handed out to Lewis for an unsafe release in the pit lane?
I personally loved it.
Yeah.
I thought it was great. Toto didn't really think so.
That was my favorite part was Toto's impression of Fernando. Yeah. So Lewis gets released a little unsafely, almost hits Fernando Alonso in the pit lane. They were both being released, right? Fernando almost overtook him in the pit.
Yeah, just because Mercedes had a slow
pit. They had a little bit slow over pit stop compared to Aston Martin's. So Fernando almost got by him, and they released him, I would say, just about barely over a half a car length, which is, the necessary distance that you would need for it to be a safe release. And they barely make it by. And at first, it looked like Lewis really, almost went into Fernando, and you're like, oh, there's going to be a penalty handed out there until you see the onboard, and he's about 3, maybe 4 feet away. But Fernando shakes his steering wheel to the right to try and sell the story to the FIA, and then cut to Toto Wolff imitating him, doing one of those.
That's so good.
Which, when I saw that, I thought that Toto, and I had texted you about this, I thought Toto was doing an imitation of George because they happened within minutes of each other. When George hit the wall, I thought Toto was mocking him.
They were under safety car, I think, when that happened.
Yeah, and it was George's safety car. Yeah. So it looked like when they cut to him that he was making fun of George, which would have been hilarious.
Yeah, Lewis afterwards said that he doesn't think he's seen a more iconic podium with the three of them.
Oh, dude, yeah. I mean, you have Max Verstappen, the young GOAT. You have Lewis Hamilton, the GOAT, and then in the middle of them, Fernando Alonso, which is he's like the stopgap.
Yeah,
for,
yeah, 2-time champ in his own right. One of the greatest.
And then next to them, the greatest designer, the greatest engineer in F1 history, Adrian Newey. Which you would think, I know they have rules, or systems in place for who gets to get on the podium, but if there's anybody that deserves to be on the podium next to a Red Bull driver week in and week out, it's Adrian Newey.
Yeah, I mean, that's why he was up there this weekend, is because they got, 100 wins for Red Bull, and then that was Newey's 200th win.
Wow.
Just himself. So all of the years of him at Williams and at McLaren and stuff. So
I think I had heard a stat that so you have 7 wins, 11 wins total between the drivers. So you have 7 wins from Lewis, 2 from Max, and 2 from Fernando Alonso. Adrian Newey alone between drivers and constructors has something like 23
championships.
Yeah. Constructors championships plus drivers championships.
That's insane.
So yeah, I think that was mathematically the most successful podium that we've ever seen.
Yeah, there was rumblings afterwards that like, oh well, now he can like start his retirement thoughts. Now that he's hit these markers, it's like he can start to think about.
Is he the most successful engineer of all time?
Probably. I mean, he's such a like interesting character because he came from like more of like a hands-on role and for him to get to the place where he is now, where he's like leading concepts and at one point he was even just like a race engineer.
Yeah.
It's hard to say if anybody will ever be able to accomplish the same things that he's done.
Yeah, that's a lesson in knowing your lane and knowing what you're good at. Because thank God that he stayed in the engineering route and on the design team and all that, as opposed to going like the Matteo Binotto route and going from lead engineer to thinking that you can run the entire team. That's 2 different heads. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
He's got much more of a technical mind than it is a governing mind, and thank God he did that. And look at what happened to Matteo.
Yeah. You didn't catch any of the alternate broadcast with Ricardo and Will Arnett?
No, you had told me that this was happening, but where were they broadcasting that? Was it on Will Arnett's podcast?
It was on ESPN.
Okay. But what, like ESPN 6, ESPN 7?
Maybe ESPN Plus or something.
Interesting. So were they doing the color commentary for it?
Yeah, it was just them two. They didn't have anyone else doing like any other. They had quarterback Josh Allen on as a special guest.
Does he play for Buffalo?
Yeah. So
I don't even know why I know that.
I don't completely understand it. I didn't really watch any of it. I saw a couple of clips of just some things people had posted, but the overall sentiment that I got was that it wasn't very good.
I can only imagine. Like, I don't know if you've ever listened to Will Arnett's F1 podcast. Mm-hmm. It's not terrible, Ours ain't so great.
Is it better than ours? Probably?
I have no idea. I don't think ours is the best, but theirs certainly isn't either.
Definitely not the best.
I just can't imagine, like, for the action of calling the race, that Daniel Ricciardo, with his personality, and Will Arnett and his personality, are going to make it a lively enough broadcast to entertain fans. Like, I wonder what the call off the line was, because you can't get away from the iconic lights out and away we go, and then just how fast and on point that color commentary is for the first few laps. I imagine it was very, very quiet.
Yeah, it was actually. That's some of the comments, whereas it was awkward because there was a lot of moments where they weren't talking and stuff. And so I was like, I think you still need somebody like a Buxton or a Jakes that can just be in there.
Just be talking.
Yeah, just filling all the holes, doing play-by-play, and then Will Arnett and Daniel Ricciardo can be there just to like say their little funny quips and...
Yeah, they're like, you need a good play-by-play guy, 1 or 2 of them, and then 1 color guy. And it seems like Will Arnett and Daniel Ricciardo are both color guys, despite the fact that Daniel Ricciardo has literally been on track more times than most drivers in their career.
Yeah,
that I'll have to look up some clips from that. You have one?
No.
Oh, okay.
So race of the year, like, where do you feel like this is gonna land? I'm gonna pull it up right here.
I think we kind of nailed
Predicted
it in our pre-race.
It either goes, I'd say it safely slots in at 3 above Jeddah, below Miami.
You think it was better than Jeddah?
Jeddah's not too fresh on my mind, so.
Me either, but from what I remember, I remember enjoying Jeddah.
What was the finish in Jeddah? Let's see. Man.
That was Checo's first win of the season. I remember feeling more hyped after Jeddah than I feel
now.
Yeah, and not that Canada was bad, but about where I expected it. I would go Jeddah, Canada, Bahrain.
Okay.
Are you cool with that?
I'm cool with that.
If we need to make changes to that next week after we review Jeddah, maybe we can go back and watch the race in 30 and see how we feel. But
bold predictions.
Hold on, let's read.
Oh, you want to go through the whole?
Yeah, so as it stands now, Australia, Miami, Jeddah, Canada, Bahrain, Azerbaijan, Spain, Italy, still more exciting, though it was canceled, than Monaco, which is still in last place. That's the list of races of the year.
Beautiful.
I'm happy about this right here.
You should be.
I'm very happy about this. This is our bold predictions.
So, my first prediction was for Aston Martin double podium.
Unfortunate.
Didn't happen.
It's about time that we start not putting eggs in Lance Stroll's basket. Starting to look that way, right?
I think that's how I feel after this weekend.
Yeah.
These are supposed to be bold predictions, so kind of went out on a limb, but I don't know.
That is bold.
I don't know if Stroll's going to be in any of my predictions moving forward. But your first one was a Ferrari in the top 4.
Thank you.
And we certainly got one of them.
I told you. I had a feeling that they were going to have a better weekend than they were predicting, and I think they did.
Yeah, this was a good track for them. Qualifying, had that gotten better for them, we could have seen 2 Ferraris in the top 4, but, I think they have a lot to be happy about after this weekend.
Yeah.
So my second one was George making contact. Although I didn't specifically say contact with what, I'm not going to give myself a point for this one.
Yeah, I had texted you about it. I almost wanted to give it to you because how comical it is, especially, just for the two of us. But contact means making contact with another driver.
Yeah.
Not with the wall. Had we said George Rex, that would be a different story. Yeah. But contact means hitting another driver.
Yeah, but hit George's contact with the barrier did create one of the 2 safety cars, which you got you your second bold prediction.
I got those early too.
Yeah. So I don't even know what lap.
It was by, I think.
Where's Logan? What time did Logan go off? Let's see. Lap 7.
Yeah. So by lap 12, I had already hit that one. Happy about that.
My third one was Piastri beating Lando, but that didn't happen.
Yes, it did.
Did it?
Yeah. With Lando's penalty, he got P13.
Oh, that's right.
So, because of the FIA and their penalty, you get an extra point there. Technically, on track, Lando beat Piastri, but you're given that.
Let me see.
On semantics.
Oh, yeah. Piastri 11th.
Mm-hmm.
So that moves on to your third one, which was 3 teams on the podium.
Thank God for Lance Stroll and Sergio Perez, I guess.
So you aced, got 3 points this week.
First time.
Bringing you to 5 points total. My 1 point this week brings me to 6, so this is still very close. It's going to be heating up over the next few rounds.
That is a tight race.
How about fantasy, though?
Let's do a little bit of a fantasy recap.
Our fantasy league.
Still tight.
You did.
Got a couple points.
Yeah.
To
so
pad my lead, but
it was, I think, within 9 points this past leading him to this race.
Yeah. And what am I at now? 19?
I always do this where I wait until after FP3 to make my changes because, you never know. Something happens that last practice session right before qualifying, change things. But unfortunately, there's too much going on this weekend. Completely forgot to set my team. So I ran the same team as last week. Had I made changes, it might be close. I don't even know. Let me see. What was your team? I might have even had this. Oh, no.
I had a pretty similar team to what I normally run. Last week, I did take Stroll out and replaced him with Gasly,
Mm-hmm.
which probably would have been better had I stuck that out. And I had Hülkenberg last week, so I took out Hülkenberg.
No, you definitely made out better having Stroll, because
Oh, wow,
Gasly
one
only
extra
made
point.
the 8 point. Yeah, so
And that just has to do with overtakes, I'm sure.
yeah,
And then because Nico...
finishing position, because Lance actually got points. So
where did Gasly finish? He didn't finish top 10?
No, he did not.
Oh, wow.
12th.
Oh, wow.
He qualified 17th. So
he got a couple points for his overtakes, but nothing for the actual
so
points.
I maybe would have only. I was gonna maybe go aggressive. I was maybe gonna get rid of Checo and try to get a better constructor, maybe like a Ferrari or something like that, and that could have worked out. Like,
yeah, but Checo did have so many overtakes. He had what, 6 overtakes?
Yeah, so he racked up a bunch of points. So,
Yeah.
Not as much as if he had landed, further up on the podium.
Man, Nico Hülkenberg, points lost. Only one. You'd think more.
Yeah, I mean that's overall just disappointing. That whole situation this weekend, but with the Haas's.
Yeah.
But I don't really want to get into that right now.
So not a whole lot of movement. I don't know why the page is saying that you lost a position because you weren't in first last week.
We were tied after qualifying, I think.
Oh, that's why.
Yeah.
Because of all your Nico points?
Probably.
Yeah. I didn't even know that you had moved up. Wow.
Yeah, we were tied there for a second.
Holy shit. So you dropped down back into second. So as it stands right now, myself, Incident, followed by Porpoise Powertrains, Susie Wolf, Stand Account in third, Strolling with my homies in fourth, J Money stays pat in fifth, Church of Checos in sixth, Let's Go Full Throttle staying in the back. Just a disappointment. And then KJ rounding it out, 500 points down.
Let's see who's on KJ's team. I don't even know.
Wow.
What is even going on here?
He has 1.3 million left in his cost cap.
Yeah.
He got some good points from Charles Leclerc, but why would you? You can tell he hasn't touched this because he's got his 2x chip on Charles Leclerc instead of on Max Verstappen.
Missing out right there.
That's just money in my pocket.
Have you used any of the special?
I haven't used a single chip. I almost played my no negative this week because I thought that maybe with the chance of rain during the race,
yeah,
that we might that I might lose out on some points, but didn't play it. I need to play my 3x because you can play that once or twice in a season.
I think it's just once.
Okay,
but
that's the big game changer. Have you played that yet?
The 3x.
Yeah.
No.
That's when shit gets real because if that doesn't hit for you, then you're fucked.
Did you see this? The Aston Martin team with the dog.
Without Lance?
No, with the dog, the security dog.
No.
They took the picture with the security dog.
Didn't they exclude Lance from their photo? I don't see him there.
Yeah, I don't see Fernando here either. So I think it's just.
That's just the team. I heard somewhere that
he wasn't in it.
Yeah, when they took the actual team photo post race, that they didn't include Lance in it. Either way, there you have it. That is Into the Chicane, the post Canadian Grand Prix recap. We will check back in with you guys with the pre Austrian Grand Prix here in about a week or so, right?
Yeah.
Killer.
See you next time.
See you guys next time. Peace.